Snow fell like fine glass dust over the sleeping city. Street lamps glowed in long, trembling lines of white, stretching into the frozen dark. A park bench waited beneath one of them, coated in frost. On that bench lay a woman in a gray coat that had long since lost its warmth. Her head bent sideways against the wood, her breath shallow and fragile. Ethan Cole noticed her first by accident. His driver had taken a wrong turn on their way back from a late-night shareholders' dinner, the kind where laughter clinked against crystal glasses and everyone talked in numbers instead of feelings. Ethan had left early, suffocated by the emptiness that always followed success. Now the car rolled past the park, and something in the dim light pulled his eyes toward the bench. "Stop here," he said. The driver hesitated. "Sir, it's below freezing." "Stop." Ethan stepped out into the cold. The air bit his face. Snow gathered in the folds of his coat. He moved closer, boots crunching softly against the path. When he saw her face, time stuttered. Amara Johnson, his maid. The one who used to hum softly in the mornings while polishing the glass stairwell, whose laughter had once reached even his closed office doors. The one who'd vanished 3 weeks ago, leaving behind only a folded uniform and a resignation note that said simply, "I'm sorry. Thank you for everything." She was asleep or unconscious, her hands clutched around an envelope and a few crumpled bills. Ethan crouched, his breath rising in white clouds. He reached out, hesitated. The sight of her there, small against the bench, gnawed at something buried deep inside him, something he'd ignored for years. "Amara," he whispered. Her eyelids trembled. She stirred, opening her eyes slowly. When she recognized him, confusion flashed across her face, followed by shame. "Mr. Cole." Her voice cracked. Why are you here?" "I could ask you the same," he said quietly. "Why are you out here like this?" She tried to sit up, clutching the envelope tighter. "Please don't. I'm fine." "You're not fine. You're freezing." "I said I'm fine." Her defiance was brittle, breaking beneath each word. He removed his scarf and placed it around her shoulders. She tried to protest, but he silenced her with a look that was not of authority this time, but of human concern. "Get in the car," he said. "Now." Amara shook her head. "I can't. I don't work for you anymore." Ethan looked at her, really looked at her. The city lights reflected in her tired eyes, and for the first time in years he felt something pierce through the armor of wealth. Guilt. "Then don't do it as my employee," he said softly. "Do it as someone who doesn't deserve to die of cold tonight." She hesitated, torn between pride and desperation. Finally she stood, trembling, and followed him toward the car. As the door shut and the heater hummed to life, Ethan glanced at her reflection in the window. She looked small against the leather seat, her fingers clutching that envelope like it contained the last fragment of her dignity. He said nothing on the drive home. Neither did she. If you're enjoying this story, click subscribe, like this video, and comment what time it is that you're watching this video. Now let's get back to the story. Ethan Cole's mansion stood on the edge of the city, a glass palace overlooking the frozen lake, beautiful and empty. When the car pulled up, lights automatically flickered on, illuminating the modern corridors and marble floors. Amara stepped inside slowly, her boots leaving small wet prints. The last time she'd been here, she was cleaning those very floors. Ethan gestured toward the living room. "Sit." She obeyed, perching on the edge of the sofa like a guest who didn't belong. The firelight brushed against her face. "Tea?" he asked. She nodded silently. While he prepared it, he kept glancing at her from the kitchen counter. Her shaking hands, the way she held herself like someone expecting to be scolded. He returned with 2 cups. "When did you leave the shelter?" Her eyes widened. "You knew. I checked after you quit." I didn't know where else you could have gone. I didn't want anyone to know, she murmured. It wasn't your problem. He frowned. You worked for me for almost a year. I think that makes it my problem. Amara looked down. I couldn't stay here anymore. Not after what happened. Ethan's jaw tightened. What did happen, Amara? She took a deep breath, as though the words themselves were heavy. Your company laid off my brother. He worked security at one of your warehouses. When he got sick, they replaced him overnight. I tried to ask HR for help, and I was told it wasn't my place to get involved. I lost my job 2 days later. He blinked, the words landing like cold stones. You think I fired you because of that? Does it matter? She whispered. It happened, and now he's gone. Ethan froze. Gone. Pneumonia. He couldn't afford treatment. Silence filled the room, louder than any sound. The fire crackled. Outside, the snow thickened. Ethan stared at his reflection in the window, his own face distorted by the glass. The billionaire who could build satellites and empires, but couldn't keep one young man alive. I didn't know, he said finally. I swear to you I didn't. Amara's eyes glistened. That's the thing about people like you. You never do. The line cut deep, not from cruelty, but from truth. Ethan set his cup down carefully. You should rest. There's a guest room upstairs. I shouldn't stay here, she said. I insist. She looked at him for a long moment, searching his face for sincerity. Then she nodded, quietly climbing the stairs. When she disappeared from sight, Ethan sank into the chair, running a hand through his hair. The mansion was suddenly alive again, not with joy, but with the haunting echo of conscience. He rose, walked to the window, and watched the snow bury his driveway. In the glass, he saw two reflections, his and hers, and realized how small the distance between them really was. Morning seeped slowly into the glass mansion, a pale wash of light over steel and silence. Ethan hadn't slept. He'd stayed in his study most of the night, staring at the flickering fireplace and thinking of a woman asleep in the guest room upstairs, a woman who once scrubbed his kitchen floors while humming to herself. For years, Ethan Cole had lived like the world owed him quiet. Money bought walls and walls bought peace. But that peace had rotted into isolation. When dawn broke, he rose, poured black coffee into a white cup, and walked out to the balcony. Below him, the city stretched like an endless machine. Smokestacks rising, people moving, all of it built on systems he owned but barely understood anymore. Behind him, soft footsteps approached. Good morning, Amara said. Ethan turned. She stood at the threshold, wearing one of his house robes. The sleeves swallowed her hands. The early light caught her skin, giving it a faint golden sheen, though her eyes were still shadowed by exhaustion. You didn't have to wake up this early, he said. I couldn't sleep. He gestured toward the city. I suppose it's hard to rest when the world feels like that. Amara stepped beside him, looking down. It's beautiful from up here. It's beautiful because you can't hear it, he replied. Down there it's chaos. Everyone running. Everyone pretending they're not scared. She glanced at him. And up here. He smiled bitterly. Up here you just pay more to be lonely. For a while they said nothing. The sound of distant sirens faded into the hum of the city. Then Amara asked quietly, Why did you stop? Stop what? Caring. The question landed like a strike. He almost laughed, but there was no humor left in him. Maybe it's the price of winning, he said. You start climbing and realize you left everyone worth caring about behind. Amara nodded slowly. That's what happened to my brother. He kept believing hard work would lift him out. But the higher he reached, the less the world cared if he fell. Her voice quivered, but she didn't cry. She'd already spent all her tears in another time, another place. Ethan's gaze softened. "Tell me about him." She hesitated. Then, as if releasing a weight, she began. His name was Elijah. He was 30. Always smiling. He used to fix things. Radios, old fans, even the coffee maker here when it broke. He said machines made more sense than people. Ethan remembered the security guard with kind eyes who used to wave at him each morning. He'd never even known his name. Amara continued. "He caught the flu last winter. It got worse. We had no insurance. He kept saying he'd get better, but I knew. I tried to ask for an advance, but the head of staff said it would set a precedent." 2 weeks later, he was gone. The air felt heavier than the snow outside. Ethan spoke softly. "You blamed me." She looked up at him. "I blamed the system that lets people die while others have 3 empty bedrooms. But yes, maybe I blamed you too. Because you could have changed it." He said nothing. The truth didn't need to be repeated. It was loud enough in his chest. Later that day, Ethan drove her to a small cafe downtown. He insisted on replacing the coat she'd been wearing, though she resisted. The tension between them was delicate, like glass stretched too thin. When they sat down, Amara asked, "Why are you doing this?" "Because last night I found you on a bench instead of in your bed," he said simply. "And because I'm tired of walking past suffering like it's invisible." She studied him as though weighing whether he meant it. "You don't owe me anything." "Maybe not. But maybe I owe someone something. Maybe that's the same thing." They ate in silence. For the first time, he noticed how she watched the world, attentively, quietly, as if cataloging small kindnesses most people missed. Outside, a group of construction workers stood laughing around a food truck, steam rising from their cups. Amara smiled faintly. "What is it?" Ethan asked. "My brother used to say coffee tastes better when you drink it standing," she said. "Because you've still got somewhere to go." Ethan nodded, feeling the truth sink in. That evening she asked if she could leave. "You've done enough, Mr. Cole," she said. "I don't want to stay longer than I should." He paused, looking at her across the dim living room. "Where will you go?" "I'll figure something out." "Amara." She shook her head. "You can't fix this. I'm not your responsibility." He stood, walked toward her. "Then let me make it my choice. Stay at least until you find work again." Her expression hardened, pride colliding with gratitude. "You want to help your conscience. That's all." He didn't deny it. "Maybe. But I also want to help you. Can those be the same thing?" Her silence was answer enough. She turned away, tears glinting before she could hide them. "I don't want pity." "Then take compassion," he said quietly. "It's the only currency I have left that's worth anything." That night she stayed. Days turned into a quiet rhythm. She helped around the house again, not as an employee, but out of habit. Ethan tried to pay her, she refused. Instead, she cooked breakfast, organized the study, even played soft music in the mornings like before. He started to realize how much life she'd once given this cold place. Sometimes he'd watch her from across the room, wondering how someone who'd lost so much could still bring warmth into the world. Other times he'd catch himself smiling, then quickly hide it, ashamed of how foreign it felt. One afternoon, Amara found him sitting in front of an old photo. His late wife, Lillian, smiling under summer sunlight. "She was beautiful," Amara said softly. "She was everything," he replied. "Then one day she got sick, and all the money in the world couldn't buy more time." Amara looked at him, eyes tender. "Maybe that's why you stopped caring." He exhaled, nodding slowly. I buried her, then buried myself in work. I told myself I was building something meaningful. But it was just a way to stay numb. You can't stay numb forever, she said. Pain always finds a way back. He met her gaze. Maybe that's what you are, Amara. My pain finding its way home. For a moment, neither of them breathed. The air between them shimmered with something fragile. Connection, maybe, or confession. Then she turned away. Pain isn't home, she whispered. But when she walked off, Ethan realized that for the first time in years, he didn't feel entirely alone. That night, snow fell again. Thicker this time, blanketing the world in white silence. Ethan watched from his balcony as Amara stood in the garden below, face tilted upward to the falling flakes. Something in that image, the contrast between her dark hair and the white snow, the stillness of it, moved him. He realized that in saving her from the street, she might just be saving him from something worse. Himself. The following week arrived with a strange kind of calm. Neither comfort nor storm, but something that hummed quietly in the air between them. Ethan woke earlier than usual now, sometimes before the first light breached the horizon. He'd find Amara in the kitchen, humming faintly, stirring a pot of oatmeal or slicing fruit. She didn't smile much, but there was peace in her movements, a grace that seemed to repair the silence that used to fill the mansion like fog. One morning, as he stood watching her from the doorway, she looked up and caught him staring. "What?" she asked, half smiling. "I was just remembering," he said. "The house used to feel like a museum. Now it feels lived in again." She set down the spoon. "Don't get used to it. I'm still leaving once I find a place." He nodded, but his eyes lingered. "Maybe that's what scares me." That day, Ethan did something he hadn't done in years. He drove himself to work. No chauffeur, no tinted glass, no filtered distance from the world outside. Just him, the hum of the city, and thoughts he could no longer ignore. As he passed downtown, he noticed the shelters, the crowded sidewalks, the faces behind fogged-up cafe windows. Each glance was a quiet rebuke. He arrived at his company. Coal Industries, the crown jewel of his empire. Glass towers, perfect symmetry. A world polished until no flaw remained. Yet as he stepped inside, something in him shifted. The lobby felt different now, colder. He watched his employees rush past with clipped greetings, eyes glazed by exhaustion. He saw himself in all of them. Busy, efficient, hollow. Inside the boardroom, his executives waited. Discussions of revenue projections and quarterly returns rolled like mechanical echoes. "Mr. Cole," his CFO said, "if we move the manufacturing plant offshore, we can save 15% on labor." Ethan stared at the man, then out the window where the city sprawled beneath him. 15%. The same language that had cost Amara's brother his life. "No," Ethan said. The room stilled. "Sir, we're not doing that. In fact, I want a report by Monday on how we can raise wages and improve medical coverage for every factory worker." The CFO blinked, confused. "With respect, that's not a discussion," Ethan cut in. His voice was calm but carried steel. "If it cuts into profits, so be it. We'll make it back somewhere else. Maybe in sleep." The executives exchanged wary glances. No one argued. As the meeting ended, Ethan lingered by the window, watching sunlight crawl across the city. Somewhere down there, Amara's brother had once walked to work believing hard work would save him. Ethan whispered, "I'll do better this time." When he returned home, Amara was outside pruning the rose garden, Lillian's old roses, which had withered from neglect. The scent of soil and frost filled the air. "You're gardening?" Ethan asked, stepping closer. She looked up, a smudge of dirt on her cheek. "They looked dead. I thought maybe they just needed care." Everything needs care, he said softly. She smiled faintly. Even billionaires. Especially them. He crouched beside her, watching her hands move gently over the stems. You remind me of her, he said without thinking. Your wife. Yes. She used to talk to the roses like they could answer. Amara chuckled. Maybe they can. You just have to listen. For a moment, Ethan imagined Lillian's laughter echoing faintly through the garden. Warm, forgiving. It was strange how grief could fade but never leave, always waiting for some spark of kindness to wake it again. Amara stood, brushing her hands on her jeans. You still miss her. Every day, he said. But lately, I think I miss the version of myself I was when she loved me. Her eyes softened. Then find him again. He met her gaze. I think I already have. That evening, Ethan invited Amara to join him for dinner. Not as an employer, but as a friend. They ate simply, roasted chicken, salad, red wine. The kind of meal that didn't feel like wealth, just warmth. You ever think about what you'd do if you could start over? He asked. Amara thought for a while. I'd study. Maybe become a nurse. Help people who can't help themselves. He nodded. You'd be good at that. She smiled. And you? Would you still be a billionaire? He laughed quietly. No. I'd still build things though. But not for profit. For purpose. She tilted her head. You talk like a man who's about to make a change. Maybe I am. The next morning, Ethan made good on that promise. He met with his foundation's board and ordered the creation of a new initiative. The Elijah Project, a fund dedicated to providing free healthcare and housing support for laid-off employees and their families. He didn't announce it publicly. No press, no cameras. Just action. When he told Amara, her eyes widened, tears forming before she could stop them. You named it after him? He deserves to be remembered, Ethan said. And so do you for reminding me what humanity looks like. She wiped her eyes, laughing softly. You're unbelievable. I've been called worse. Weeks passed. The snow began to melt, revealing the first hints of spring beneath the frost. The mansion felt different now, filled with life, laughter, the smell of cooking, and quiet conversation. But with warmth came the awareness that warmth never lasts. One afternoon, Amara approached him in the study. Her eyes were resolute, but sadness lingered behind them. I got a job offer, she said. Ethan looked up from his papers. Already? Yes. At St. Mary's Clinic. They need an assistant. It's not much, but it's something real. He smiled, though it pained him. That's wonderful, Amara. I'll be moving into staff housing next week. The words fell heavy between them. Of course, he said quietly. You should. She stepped closer. You've done more for me than anyone ever has. I don't know how to thank you. Don't, he said. Just keep living. For a long moment they stood facing each other, unspoken emotions filling the silence. When she finally turned to leave, Ethan said, Amara. She paused. Thank you, he said, for saving me. That night, after she packed, Ethan wandered the empty halls of the mansion. Every echo of her voice felt like a ghost he wasn't ready to lose. He poured a drink, stood before the fire, and thought of all he'd built. The empire, the glass towers, the sterile wealth, and how none of it had ever filled the emptiness until a homeless woman reminded him what compassion was. Outside, the roses she'd revived stood tall in the moonlight, alive again. The morning Amara left, the house felt emptier than it had before she ever entered it. Ethan watched from the balcony as she loaded her small suitcase into a taxi. The sun broke through the clouds just as she turned to wave goodbye. For a moment, he thought she might look back again, But she didn't. The gate closed behind her, and with it, something in his chest seemed to close too. He returned inside. The smell of her cooking lingered faintly in the air. Cinnamon, soap, the traces of someone who had turned a house into a home. He walked through every room like a man trying to remember a dream before it vanished completely. He ended up in the garden. The roses she had revived now stood in full bloom, deep red as if the earth itself had forgiven the winter. He knelt, touching one of the petals. "Thank you," he whispered to no one in particular. Then, quietly, he made a decision. 3 months passed. Coal industries changed more in those 90 days than in the last 9 years. Ethan restructured entire departments, cut executive bonuses, and redirected millions into housing programs and education scholarships for former employees. He sold one of his private jets to fund the Elijah Project Hospital wing. When reporters tried to interview him, he refused. "If you have to announce a good deed," he said once, "you probably did it for the wrong reason." Yet the city began to notice anyway. For the first time, coal industries became known not for innovation, but for compassion. Still, Ethan's nights remained restless. He thought often of Amara, wondering if she'd found peace. He never visited her, though he knew where she worked. He told himself it was better that way. Some debts are repaid not with reunion, but with respect. One rainy afternoon, while reviewing papers in his office, Ethan received an envelope addressed in handwriting he recognized instantly. Amara. He tore it open. Inside was a short letter. "Mr. Cole, I heard about the Elijah Project. I don't know what to say except thank you. You didn't have to do that, for him or for me, but you did. The clinic where I work now treats patients from your foundation. I see faces every day that remind me why we both needed that second chance. You once told me pain always finds a way back. Maybe that's true. But I've learned that kindness does too. Take care of yourself, Ethan. Amara." He folded the letter carefully, then sat in silence. A strange calm washed through him, the kind that came only when you realized you'd done something right without needing reward. But that night, a call shattered the quiet. It was from St. Mary's Clinic. "Mr. Cole," the voice said urgently. "It's Amara Johnson. There's been an accident." Ethan's car tore through the city rain. Red lights blurred in the storm as he gripped the wheel. He hadn't felt this kind of fear in years. Not the corporate fear of failure, but the raw, human fear of loss. When he reached the hospital, doctors were already moving briskly through the corridors. A nurse recognized him instantly. "She was hit by a car on her way home from the clinic," the nurse said. "She pushed a boy out of the way. The child's fine, but she took the full impact." Ethan's throat tightened. "Where is she?" "Room 317. "But sir, she's unconscious." He nodded, pushing through the door. There she was, Amara, pale against the sheets, a bandage across her head, machines humming softly. The sight broke him. He sat beside her, taking her hand carefully. "You saved someone again," he whispered. "Even when you didn't have to." Hours passed. He stayed, barely moving. The doctors told him she might wake, or she might not. It was too soon to tell. That night, for the first time since his wife's death, Ethan prayed. Not to any god in particular, but to the universe itself, for mercy, for redemption, for one more chance to say thank you. Days blended together. Ethan never left the hospital. He paid for her treatment, sat through every test, every update. Nurses whispered about how the billionaire in room 317 seemed more broken than any patient there. Finally, after 6 long days, Amara opened her eyes. The first thing she saw was him. Her voice was faint. "You look terrible." He laughed softly, tears welling. "You're awake. What are you doing here?" "Waiting," he said. Like I should have been all along. She smiled weakly. The boy. He's fine. Because of you. Amara closed her eyes, relief flooding her face. Good. Ethan took her hand again. You scared me. She looked at him, eyes soft but tired. You didn't have to come. I know, he said. But I wanted to. Maybe some things you can't buy your way out of. Maybe showing up is one of them. Her lips curved faintly. You've changed. He squeezed her hand. Because of you. Over the next few weeks, Ethan visited daily. He brought books, flowers, and stories from the world outside. The new hospital wing opening, the people being helped, lives changed. When she was strong enough to walk again, they strolled the hospital gardens together, slow steps beneath budding trees. Ethan told her about his plans to leave day-to-day business. I want to spend what's left of my life doing something that matters, he said. You already are, she replied. He looked at her, the spring light framing her face. You know, I used to think redemption was something you earned. Now I think it's something you share. Amara smiled gently. Then you've already found it. He paused. Not entirely. There's one more thing I need to do. A month later, headlines broke. Billionaire Ethan Cole signs away fortune to humanitarian trust. Every news outlet erupted. Analysts called it madness. Activists called it a miracle. But Ethan didn't care about labels. He kept only one property, a modest apartment overlooking the same park where he'd found Amara sleeping months before. When reporters asked why, he said simply, because I finally understand what wealth is supposed to do, move. He disappeared from public life after that, quietly stepping out of the empire he'd built. Amara visited him one evening after hearing the news. She found him sitting on a bench, the same one she'd once slept on, feeding crumbs to pigeons. She approached slowly. You really gave it all away. He smiled. Most of it was never mine to keep. You could have lived in luxury forever. I did, he said softly. And it was the loneliest place on earth. She sat beside him. The park was quiet now, the city breathing around them. I don't know what to say, she murmured. Then don't, he said. Just sit with me. They sat in silence, the evening light stretching long and golden across the grass. Ethan glanced at her. Do you ever think about that night? Every time I see snow, she said. I still wonder, he whispered, why I stopped that night. I could have just driven past. You didn't, she replied. Maybe something in you was still awake. He smiled faintly. Maybe something in you woke it up. The following year, the city learned to speak Ethan Cole's name differently. Not as a tycoon, not as a man of power, but as a man who gave back. Across neighborhoods once forgotten by wealth, hospitals bore his emblem quietly on their walls. The Cole Redemption Trust. It wasn't about charity anymore. It was about rebuilding, about dignity. And somewhere beneath those sweeping changes, two lives found their still point. Amara had returned to teaching. Not in schools of privilege, but in a small community center on the south side, where laughter echoed through cracked walls and children learned to dream again. She no longer worked as anyone's maid. She was Miss Amara now, the teacher who smelled of jasmine and always smiled like she knew a secret. Every Friday evening, as the city dimmed into twilight, Ethan would arrive at the community center in an old blue car. He would help her sweep the floors, fix the lights, hand out food boxes to families. They rarely spoke of the past. It wasn't needed anymore. Sometimes, when the children played outside and music from the church down the road drifted through the air, he would catch her looking at him. There was peace in that look. And forgiveness. One crisp winter evening, an invitation arrived at Amara's apartment. A white envelope sealed with gold wax. It was from the Humanitarian Guild. They wanted to honor Ethan for his lifetime contribution to social reform. When she told him, he only chuckled. "I don't need another room full of people clapping for me." "You should go," she said gently. "It's not about applause. It's about what it means to others." He hesitated, then nodded. "Only if you'll be there." The gala was held in the same ballroom where, years ago, Ethan once hosted extravagant investor parties. But now, the chandeliers glittered for a different reason. There were no million-dollar deals, only stories of lives rebuilt through his foundation. Ethan stood at the edge of the crowd, uncomfortable in the spotlight as usual. When his name was announced, applause thundered. He walked up slowly, adjusting his suit that looked oddly plain for a billionaire. The host handed him the award, an engraved glass plaque that caught the light like water. He paused at the microphone, scanning the faces before him. "I spent half my life trying to own everything," he began quietly, "and the other half learning how to let go." A murmur rippled through the room. "I thought wealth could fix pain. But I learned pain doesn't listen to money. It listens to kindness. And I didn't learn that alone." He turned slightly, eyes meeting Amara's in the crowd. "She taught me that sometimes the greatest act of love is to see someone when the world looks away." Silence. Then applause again, softer this time, reverent. Amara felt tears blur her vision. Not of sorrow, but something gentler. Pride, perhaps. Closure. A few months later, Ethan fell ill. Nothing dramatic. Just the slow unraveling of a body that had spent too many years under strain. He refused to be hospitalized, choosing instead to stay in his small apartment overlooking the park. Amara visited every day. They spoke less and sat more. Silence became their shared language. One evening, as the sun set, Ethan handed her a sealed envelope. "For when I'm gone," he said softly. She frowned. "Don't talk like that." He smiled. "It's not sadness. It's gratitude." She placed the envelope on the table but didn't open it. Instead, she took his hand. "You saved me once," she whispered. He shook his head faintly. "No, Amara. You saved me every day after that." He drifted into sleep with that smile, the one he wore only when the world felt right again. When he passed, the city mourned quietly. There were no extravagant funerals, no marble statues, only flowers left at the community center, and a candle vigil at the park bench where he used to feed the pigeons. Amara sat among the mourners but didn't cry. She felt a strange calm, as if she could still hear his laughter somewhere in the wind. That night, she finally opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter. Simple, unadorned. "Amara, if you're reading this, it means I've finally gone home. Not to marble gates or mansions, but to peace. You once told me kindness always finds its way back. You were right. Every good thing I became traced back to you. There's a trust account attached to this letter. Not for you, but for your school. Let it grow. Let it build dreams in my name and yours. And when people ask who taught Ethan Cole what life meant, tell them it was a woman who had every reason to give up, but didn't. Thank you for seeing me when I was invisible. Ethan." Amara folded the letter to her heart, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. She looked out the window, at the city skyline aglow under a lavender dawn, and whispered, "Goodbye, Ethan. You made it home." Years later, a bronze plaque was placed in the park, beneath the same oak tree where they once sat. It read, "Here sat a man who learned that wealth isn't counted in coins, but in second chances." Every morning, children from Amara's school played near that bench, chasing laughter into the sunlight. And sometimes, when the light hit just right, she swore she could see him sitting there, hat tilted, eyes smiling, feeding crumbs to pigeons at peace at last.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.